Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the second round of the Superprestige, which took place in Overijse, the Belgian race with the most editions, a real classic on the calendar, and with me here to discuss all the action is Issam.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Let's start by talking about the men's race. It was an entertaining battle. Laurens Zweek had the best start, but the course here in Overijse was nothing for him. He would fall back quite far through the order. Thibau Nys made a much stronger impression early on in the race already. He took the lead in lap 2, but it was still quite close. There were almost 20 riders within 15 seconds. In the third lap there was a significant moment because Nys' chain dropped. Van Toerenhout took the lead and Issam let him go. Issam blocked the chasing group, giving Van Toerenhout a 15-second gap. Nys, meanwhile, had caught back up to the chasers and was quickly to take the lead of that group. Michels was initially leading the chase, but he was too slow. When Nys took the lead, it was really over for Van Toerenhout in no time. Nys closed that gap until, with 3 laps to go, Issam placed a big attack on the steep climb early in the lap. Nys was the only one able to follow, and he took over. Going into the final lap, however, things started to merge together. Nys was in the lead with Issam on his wheel. Van der Putte was pretty much on that wheel with Van der Haar just a handful, maybe 1 or 2 seconds behind actually. In that final lap, Issam initially started pacing. Van der Haar and Van der Putte were dropped. It was between Nys and Issam, the two strongest riders of the race. In the technical section, Thibau Nys took the lead and put Issam under a lot of pressure. Issam needed to leave a couple of bike lengths through a downhill, but managed to come back, and then on the acceleration the gap stretched out. It was still close, but after a section of tight 180s, it was really over for Issam. He made a small mistake, needed to put his foot on the ground. From there, Thibau Nys was gone and he could take victory. Van der Haar ended third behind Issam. Let me start by issuing an apology to Thibau Nys. I wasn't really familiar with your game, Thibau. You had me doubting about the preparation, how would you come back, but yeah, he proved me wrong, Issam. I'm not afraid to say it. I had my doubts. I didn't expect this at all today. Thought he would improve at some point, but definitely not as spectacular. But if you look at his race, that chain drop, comes back, single-handedly gets back Van Toerenhout, fights off 2 attacks from Issam, and then very smartly rides to victory, uses his strength on this course to the absolute maximum.
Yeah, totally. I think that he he showed the doubters that he is in good form and that he is preparing quite well, and that the season could be a very good season for him. It was a good race for from his side. I think that he technically put the others under pressure when he was able to, and he was strong. He was very strong. I mean, the way his chain dropped and then was able to come back to the front again, I think that is definitely, when I saw, the effort that he had to put in to get back to the front, I was a bit scared for him to blow up and not be able to continue the effort that he was putting in, but he managed to get to the front. He managed to dictate the faith of the guys up front, and when Issam went, he was super alert, was always on his wheel, knew where the biggest danger came from in the last couple of laps, and he put Issam on the pressures on the sections that he suited him the most. Issam was struggling left and right, with the corners, but overall I think that could we call this a comeback? Somewhat, I would say, especially if you consider the last couple of races that he has done wasn't really particularly great. He bounced back perfectly, and the question is now going to be, is this going to be the start of Nys? Is he now truly well underway, and is this going to be the form that we can expect for the next couple of races? Or is there maybe going to be a fallback somewhere along the couple of weeks that are coming up? And that's going to be interesting, but for now, I think impressive performance by Nys, and a job well done and well-deserved victory for sure.
I do think we can call it a return to the top for Nys, because of course last year he had that flying start to the season coming right off his road season, but he completely fell off as soon as the European Championships hit. This is the first time he was truly in contention for victory since the Koppenberg last year. After that, he only scored a single podium, and that was in Benidorm. Yes, it was a close race, but he was never really in contention for victory there. His start to this season was not good at all, and just in my defense, let me explain why I had my doubts. And I read an article in the newspaper this morning, which I think kind of makes me at least feel like there was some point of validity to my doubts, because there was an interview with Paul van der Bos in het laatste nieuws, and they say Thibau Nys knew that his preparation was hampered by illness, but still his results early on in the season were far below expectations. They were a bit worried about that. And then here comes the point. This is essentially what I've been hammering on. Thibau Nys should build his endurance base and then start working on his cyclocross specific trainings. And that's what they did. So that's, to me at least, the good part from this. They did decide to work on his base, because without a base it's going to be a very tough season. So Thibau Nys went to Spain the past week and that worked out. They still say Nys didn't do much cross specific training, pretty much only the races. So if he will become much better, that could be quite a scary thought, but I don't want to get ahead of myself here. Iserbyt today physically looked to be at least as good as Nys, but as you said, he didn't look comfortable. You had this long section from the Fiat 500 all the way to this 180 downhill corner where they were walking towards the end of the race, and in this section Nys was technically much better. And even on that final section with the tight 180s with the yellow tape before a climb, also there Nys was better. You saw Iserbyt unclipping his foot in a lot of corners. You also saw it in one of the final corners on the road. That doesn't help. It might not lose you that much through the corner, but you need to clip in before you can accelerate. That's 2-3 seconds you lose in terms of your acceleration, and that accumulates to 1 or 2 seconds lost towards Nys, who can hammer the power right away. So I think that Iserbyt can be relatively happy with his performance today. He did race yesterday. Do you think that that still played any role in his performance?
To be honest, I doubt. I think that it didn't look like it. Let's just put it this way. I think obviously the margin that he lost could have played somewhat of a role, but then he could have been maybe a little bit more conservative in the race itself, because he really took also a lot of initiative in the race. So I don't think that we could really blame the race from yesterday as a result of him losing out today to Nys. I think that he had a very good day. It looked very good. I think that if it wasn't for the mishaps that he had, and always unclipping and not being sure if he's going to make the corner without or with clipping, and it looked like he had some problems with the pedals overall. But I think that if he didn't have that issues whatsoever, then he already would have been able probably to fight it out a little bit more for the win. And I think that Nys would have had a little more issue with Iserbyt. But I don't think that he should really look at Hirderstrand and say that was the reason why he didn't win. It was just someone was a little better and he didn't perform enough to get the victory, and that is probably that is it. That's the story I think that we should make out of it.
Yeah, that's also what Iserbyt himself said after the race. I don't want to blame it. It's early in the season. I'm quite fresh, so I don't want to blame it on Hirde saying that it didn't play a role. I was just curious to see what you thought about that, because I agree with you there. I don't really know if it were mishaps or pedal issues. To me, it seemed more confident, and Iserbyt also never really seems like the best technical guy. It's fine, but it's not special. And Thibau Nys is therefore a very hard opponent for anyone, because you need to drop Nys, but there are few riders with better technical skills than Nys, so you're not going to catch him off guard most likely on a technical section. You can't sprint against him because you'll lose. So that means that you have to find a trick to play on him, or you need to be much stronger physically, which of course we know if Nys is in his best form is also proving a difficulty. So even if you're evenly matched, it's going to be hard to beat Nys. He's a very complete cyclocross rider. The question is, as you said already, how much can he continue that through the season? Let's hope for him that he doesn't collapse like he did last year. And then we should be in for a very interesting season. We had a couple of other riders in the front of the race. Let's first talk about Lars van der Haar here, Issam. He was quite pissed with himself. He was upset with his ride. He said, I rode like a coward. I was constantly sitting back. I was lazy. I don't know what I was doing. Every single time I was behind riders making mistakes. And then I could close them back the gaps uphill, so I just kind of assumed that. I think Van der Haar could have easily been in contention for the win here had he rode more aware, because he was constantly sitting in the final wheels of the group, and then exactly what he described, that is exactly the risk he took, and that happened.
I have my mic muted, but I had to laugh when he said cow. I didn't hear that interview, but I think he described it quite well, to be honest. His words, not mine. But I would say that it was definitely, he had the legs, I think, to be up there. And every time he kind of let himself get in a situation in which guys up front, it was mainly Van der Putte and Michels, but also Van Toornhout was getting in his way sometimes. And then he had to, close the gaps, get to the front again. And then you were like, okay, now he's going to pounce on the situation and make something out of this race. And then he falls back again. And it was even on the last lap, he was again behind Van der Putte. Of course, I think at that point he already had put a lot of effort in a couple of times, and he wasn't able to clear Van der Putte that easily in the round. And I don't think that at that time it was already his race was kind of done already, I feel. It was still the laps before that, used a lot of energy that was unnecessary, and I think that if he didn't do that, he would have been closer up, and especially he would have at least been with Iserbyt and would be on him in his wheel and fight maybe for second. I don't know about the victory, but it would have been a different race for him, for sure. And it's a bit of a shame to see it happen, but I think that he can be satisfied with the form, because I think that it's looking quite good. And the fact that he's already, that he's being able to play for victory is something that you can take with you and be happy about. But obviously, if you feel that there was more in the race, you almost, it's a bit more difficult to see it in that light. But overall, you will be happy when you go into the next week and focus on the next couple of races, because there's a lot more races coming up.
It is the risk of his strategy. His strategy of sitting at the back and then coming forward kind of out of nowhere has paid him dividends at many occasions. The European Championships on the Vanberg in 2021 are probably the prime example. He was just hiding and hitchhiking a group of Belgians, and once the Belgians had all killed each other, he hit the front and won the race. But sometimes, like today, it doesn't work out. If you're hiding that much, and there's riders in the front group who visually don't belong there, Van der Putte and Michels were making many, many mistakes. They were looking quite clumsy compared to the other riders. Then the risk is that you waste a lot of energy and eventually miss the decisive move, which happened today. I don't think he would have won, but if he would have been with Iserbyt, he would have automatically been in contention for the win. That was more my point. Then I don't mean that the Jeansman, Van der Putte and Michels don't belong there, because they rode a very strong race. For Michels, you kind of expect it. He's good on these courses. But Van der Putte, this shows again how much he's progressing. Because, yes, the climbing here has been broken up. But still, this course would have been too hard for Van der Putte 2 seasons, probably even last season. He did very well today. He struggled a lot on that first climb. He was running almost every lap. Probably his last lap was the best lap of him there. But that was a sign of how much he has improved, and I think we should mention that despite those mishaps there on that climb, he rode a good race on a course that I still will say is not the best for him. If we look at the entire top 10, we see that Nys, Iserbyt and Van der Haar were on the podium ahead of Van der Putte. Joran Wieseuren ended 5th ahead of Michael van Toornhout and Jente Michels. Lander Looks ended 8th ahead of David Haverdings. Felipe Orts completed the top 10. Issam, I think we can roughly divide these riders into 2 categories. We have riders that surged forward during the race and riders that fell backwards during the race. Let's start with the riders who surged forward, and that's Looks, but above all Wieseuren. I am really impressed by Wieseuren. Much of what I just said about Van der Putte can also be said about Wieseuren, because this is not a course for him. He was quite far back, I think 18th at some point, but never gave up, kept picking up riders, and 5th is a very good place for him, and it will help him stay in contention for the overall Superprestige classification.
Absolutely, and I think that there is nothing wrong with his base. I feel that maybe with the speed he can work a little bit, but the way he came through the field was spectacular, to be honest, because I think that he was at some point, he was definitely outside the top 10, and then he made his way into the top 10, and he picked up the riders that were falling back a little bit, and he was just able to surge through the field. And I think that was a very, very strong outing for him. Strong 5th place. We have talked about him already a couple of races, and I think that it's just we're waiting for more moments where he can shine at the front of the race, I think. So again, very good race. And mature, never really looked to panic, because you can, when you even have the legs to get through the field, sometimes when you pick up the riders, you try to overtake and you put maybe a little too much effort in. It was today, the circumstances and the course, it was somewhat easy to blow up, and you don't even notice it. You notice it too late, really. And then at that point, there's not really much you can salvage from the race. And no, he did it. He did a great job, and it was a good race from his side.
Wieseure still leads the Superprestige classification. He is tied with Niels van der Putten. Lars van der Haar is just 1 point behind. And then Michael van Toerenhout is in 4th, 3 points behind. Thibau Nys, after his bad race in Ruddervoorde, sits in 6th in this classification. It's quite irrelevant because he won't do the final race. Iserbyt still has hopes to win. He is 9th. He has 14 points, which puts him 12 points down. He has gained 3 points in this race. Then the second category of riders, Issam, those are the ones that blew up after making a move. I'm thinking about Michael van Toerenhout, the European champion, was off the front, but again, he's paying the white pants tax. He was in the white pants and then he can't win. Maybe, again, I will say it, swap those pants, maybe a victory will come, but then his last opportunity will be the Koppenberg, because after that is the European Championships, which of course he could win, but just like last year, he wouldn't be my favorite, but he can prove us wrong. Then in the same category of riders, we have David Haverdings. 9th is still a good result for him, but after being in the leading group until 2 or 3 laps to go, he definitely fell down the order quite a bit. He can still be happy. He will probably duke it out with Michels in Pontevedra for the U23 title. And then outside of the top 10, I don't really know if we can put him in the same category as some, but Toon Aerts, what do you make of his race, or more his season so far? In Beringen, he was one of the favorites. He was one of the best riders. He had that attack, fell back, 4th place. In Essen, he had an incident with his chain, still manages 5th. Ruddervoorde behind the start crash, 10th. Today, a clean race, 13th, on a course that suits him. What do you make of that?
It's a bit difficult, I think I would say that I expected him, at least in this race as well, I expected him maybe a little bit more within the top 10. He wasn't really able to get in there, and it's a bit difficult to place it, because I don't know if this is it, if there is not going to be any more improvements in terms of how he is compared to the rest of the field, right? Is he going to be able to get more top 10s in the bigger classifications? And at the moment, it doesn't really look like that is going to be the case, or it's just going to be just within the top 10, but like 8th, 9th, that region. We have to wait a little bit. I don't know if this in particular was a course, of course, with the circumstances today, it was a fast race. I don't know if that suits him that well. I think that we need to really get those muddy races with some climbing in it, and then we could maybe see a Toon Aerts that will, rise to the occasion and get himself more at the front. There is a base for sure, and there is something to work with, and it's going quite well in terms of he is up there and all that. But I feel that if he wants to really play a bigger role in the races, then he needs a couple more percent, and he has to find that somewhere. And it's at the moment that it wasn't shown today, and hopefully it will be shown in a couple more weeks' time. He has the time to do it, and the races with the rain that will be coming one day, who knows what will come out of Toon Aerts in terms of performance.
I mean, bad races do still exist, and sometimes you're just training a bit more now to get that super compensation next week at the European Championships. And he certainly wasn't the only one that could have had a bad day. Emil Verstringen was also quite disappointing, and his story is similar to ours. Good in Beringen, 6th after a comeback there. Then Verstringen was 28th in Ruddervoorde. I even wrote in our preview that Verstringen might be the first rider for Krelan Corendon because this course suits him a lot. So 17th is a disappointing result for him. Cameron Mason, I also don't know what happened to him. He had a decent start. He was, I think, 20th, but then he never moved forward. In fact, he finished 30th, which is really, really disappointing. I don't know if anything happened, but And then finally, Gerben Kuipers Issam. He had a bad start, was moving forward like crazy, but just completely blew his hat off. After Thibau Nys had that chain issue, he overtook Kuipers. Kuipers just faded from there and eventually didn't even finish. So I think it's also quite interesting that we're talking about so many riders because it just shows how broad the level at the top is, because these are all riders that we would expect to be able to compete for a top 5, and that's really, I'm really happy about this because we've been here on the podcast for years where there were 3, 4, 5 riders at most that could win these races, and it was really Iserbyt cleaning most of them, and occasionally Van der Haar would be able to do something. But finally, the gaps of the faded generation of Albert are being filled in by new riders, and we get these clashes between different riders from different generations, which also makes the full-time cross very interesting. Then let's go and talk about the women's race, Issam. Here we had Inge van Heijden taking the whole shot. Alvarado and Brandt needed to run up the first climb as they were in traffic. Van Empel tried to seize the opportunity here and set a pace. She was followed by Clauzel and Casasola, but it wasn't too much effect. Alvarado and Brandt managed to come back, although it must be said that Alvarado needed to go a bit deeper to come back than Brandt. In the third lap, Brandt placed an attack with Casasola in her wheel. Van Empel was caught off guard on the steep climb. She was in traffic towards the back of the group. It took her some time to clear that traffic and make a move, and never really closed that gap. Brandt kept pacing up front until Casasola made a mistake on that same steep climb early in the lap. From there on, Brandt looked in control. At a couple of times it has seemed, maybe Van Empel can come back, but it never really was in danger for Brandt. She took victory here, 35 years old. She still has it ahead of Van Empel. Casasola took third place. I already mentioned it just now, her age, but Lucinda Brandt was the oldest rider at the start line today. She's racing against kids who are a decade and a half younger than her. She's been around in the sport forever. I mean, we're nearing the 10-year anniversary of that big crash in BLS on the... Well, okay, maybe we're not nearing the 10-year anniversary just yet, but you get the point. She's been around many times, most experienced rider, and today she gets it done. And to me, I don't know, I think her technical skills made the difference, and that is a very weird thing to say about Brandt.
Yeah, it is. I think that if you would have said that like 2-3 years ago, it would have been a laughable matter, to be honest. But it was somewhat the case. The confidence was there for sure. It didn't always look that pretty, but it did the job, you know. It did the job, and she was able to put the others under pressure where it matters the most. And we have seen it already in Rutherford, I think, where when she gets a gap, listen, if it's a second, if it's half a second, if it's 2 seconds, she will go and continue and push forward. And I think that is, you know, that was the kind of show today. It was, you know, she gets the gap and she will ride for the gap, and she will not, you know, make it an easy day for the others. If you want to get in my wheel, you got to work for it, and you got to get in my wheel, and then we'll see what we do. And even if you're in my wheel, I might still push and might still make you suffer a little more. So it was a very good race, and in a way, maybe it was somewhat coming. I didn't really see it coming that much, but the form is there, and it looks really good. She opened the season quite well, and it's just getting better and better. And as you said, on the age side, I mean, I don't want to be age shaming here, but normally age will play a role at the end of your career. But the rate she is going at, I think that she's only getting better and better, and it looks very good. And I don't see that end of a career coming anytime soon for the moment. and it looks very good. It's again was the strongest today and deserved the victory for sure. But maybe we can also say that Van Empel today could have taken a little bit more initiative and could have put herself in better positions, but didn't do so.
There would be no reason for Brandt to end her career now, because both on the road and in cross she's still doing just fine, more than fine. She was in the top 10 of the Tour de France Femmes this year. She's winning here in cross, and obviously age will start to play a role at some point, but for Brandt it's something we discussed on a podcast with Sven Nys a couple of seasons, I think a year and a half ago to be precise. He said that Brandt might be declining a little bit, but that her advantage is that she can still improve her technical abilities every year, because she's only started taking cross seriously relatively late in her career, prioritizing that. So that does play a role here. And then why does it make a difference in her victory today? Because on that same section that we just discussed, Nys having the advantage, Van Empel had a disadvantage today. From that Fiat 500 until those yellow 180 corners, Brandt was much better. And that was while Brandt was running a less aggressive tire, at least on the front, than Van Empel. Van Empel was running a Rhino, something that looked like that, whereas Van Empel was on the Dugas Typhoon. So despite that, Van Empel was struggling there, and this race kind of showed the two things that we discussed last year in a podcast when we were talking. So what vulnerabilities does Van Empel have? And we came to the conclusion her vulnerabilities are her technical skills. Riders like Manon Bakker have told us that they think they can follow Van Empel on a technical course, but they just lose out power-wise. And then secondly, it's the awareness of Van Empel, because you saw it today. She was out of position. Brandt attacks. She needs to clear traffic. Once she clears traffic, she's 14 seconds down. She manages to stabilize the gap at 10 seconds. She gains a bit on the uphill sections. But then on that technical section, she loses everything she gained. She comes back a little, but loses a bit more in that fast downhill towards the finish. Van Empel in many ways was put under pressure in a similar way as Iserbyt, but the difference is that Van Empel was a bit stronger than her rival Brandt on the uphill sections. Van Empel said that she was happy with her result. She said that she's taking a different approach to the season planning, a rigorously different approach even, to be precise. But then there was another weird thing. I read an interview somewhere of the post-race transcription, and I have my doubts a bit if this is really what she said, but according to that interview, she said, "Do you think that I lost today after a second place?" And then I would always say yes, because despite your seasonal planning, you finished second, you're the world champion, you won so much last year. Of course, people are going to be asking these questions. How do you deal with that? Because it is a setback, and it is relevant how you deal with it. But at the end of the day, Issam, I don't think it matters too much, because Van Empel expected this, and that's the biggest difference. If you don't expect to be not this good, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, but I mean, look, everyone has their own personalities, I would say, and everyone deals with wins and defeats in a different way, in a different fashion. But I mean, even if you know that the form is not there, you're still racing, right? You're still going for the win, and I don't know if your head should be at, oh, I know that my form is not that great, and if I don't win, it's all good. I think you should give it your all, even if you're even in a stage of a season where it's just not really going well. I mean, that doesn't mean that you give 95%, or it's okay if you lose. And I don't know what to say of that. It's not my cup of tea, I have to say. But look, I think that in the end, for Van Empel, the fact that they know what they're doing, or it seems like they know what they're doing, is a good sign. And I think that they needed to switch it up a little bit, try a different approach for the season, which I'm totally for it. And we're going to see if that will pay dividends, if that will show up in the later phases of the cyclocross season towards the World Championships, but also how the road season will be influenced by this approach. And that will be, I think, also interesting to see how that will go. But road season is so far from now, so let's just focus on the cyclocross for now. And I think that for that, if that is the case and they took a different approach, we have to wait and see how that will play out in the next coming weeks.
Indeed, we will be able to draw conclusions on the cross season after the World Championships and the preparation after her spring campaign. For now, I think it makes sense that she trusts her coaches, and it's more a sense of realism rather than not really wanting to go for it, not really a lack of mentality, because it's easy because Van Empel has been very perfectionistic in her interviews in the past couple of years, even when winning, being critical and talking about tiredness. But I do remember the World Championships U23 in Fayetteville, and Van Empel was really upset that she didn't win there, even though we kind of saw it coming. So I think this is really a sense of realism rather than a sense of not really wanting it, not being motivated for the cross season or of any part of the season. So with that said, let's look at the entire top 10. Brandt won ahead of Van Empel, Casasola, Alvarado and Vash. Clauzel was 6th ahead of Van der Heijden, Moors, Foucounet and Verdonschot. Casasola, another solid 3rd place. I think they can be very happy with her signing at Crelan Corendon. It's her first podium in a big Belgian race. Of course, she already finished on the podium of the European Championships last year. For a moment, I was inclined to say that she was going to win the Koppenberg Cross, but the changes to the course last year that have made the downhills more technical, especially if they are a bit muddy. This year, some more technicalities added to the downhill as well, I believe will make it more difficult for her, but we should be in for an intriguing battle between Brandt, Van Empel, Casasola. Alvarado will not be starting the Koppenberg Cross, and if you look at today's race, it's easy to see why. Issam, yesterday there was this Hosanna talk on the Belgian commentaries, Alvarado by far the best rider at the moment. I don't necessarily think that's unjustified, but at the same time, we also know Alvarado not really good on the climbing courses, and that showed today.
Yeah, although I expected a little bit more, but maybe her comments regarding yesterday, where she said that the legs were not really that good, were true, and that she doesn't really feel that that she doesn't really feel that the shape is there at the moment, or at least doesn't really have a good day, and that will add up, especially if you already feel it on the Saturday. Sometimes that can weigh very heavy on the Sunday, and I think that it somewhat did in some way. But it will be interesting to see how the others will come out of the Koppenberg and going into the Europeans. And I think for Alvarado, it's a smart decision to not show up at the Koppenberg. And I don't know what to expect from her at the Europeans, but I think that if the form is somewhat there, who knows? That could be a very good course for her. But yeah, it's understandable that she in the planning skipped the Koppenberg because, I think anyone in his right mind would, if you have the Europeans as a goal, I probably would have skipped the Koppenberg. I don't think that it's that worth it. But it's an iconic race in a way, and I can understand the love for the sport, and that some definitely wanna race that course because it's an iconic and tough course, and if you win there, you can really put that on your palmares. But the Europeans are very close then.
Well, and don't forget, for a rider like Brandt, who's going to do the full season, winning the X2O trophy is 25,000 euros. That's a lot of money. Even if you end 3rd, I think you still get something like 10,000 euros, or maybe even 15,000, something in that region. That's a lot of money. So I can see for riders like Brandt, Casasola, why they do it. Alvarado, maybe not. It makes sense for her to not do it because she would lose so much time that it's not worth doing it anyway. Let's not make this a rant of the X2O trophy and the role the Koppenberg Cross plays in that. Let's focus on the results here in Overijse still. Vash ended 5th. I must say, after Woerden, I had expected a bit more from her. She clearly didn't have the legs. She blew up trying to follow that attack of Brandt. Clauzel in 6th, I think, is a very solid start to her big season. Let's call it the big season, because she has, of course, raced, but she raced the racetracks in the US, and then she did 2 races in France where she was beaten by Schreiber. Would have been interesting to see what Schreiber could do here on the course, but definitely a good result for Clauzel. Then if we go to the 2 Belgians in the top 10, Issam, for Verdonschot 10th, this is clearly not a course where she does well, but Fleur Moors 8th, I would say that is a very good result, even though it's a course that does suit her.
Even if it did, I think that it is still an outstanding performance. She's talented, and we have said it a couple of times. We just were saying that, Belgian media shouldn't really put that much pressure on her. And I think that today was, she got a course presented that suits her a little bit more. But then you still have to make the most out of it. And, you can still... It's a course where you can easily overstep it and really blow up somewhere along the way. So, and she didn't do that. She got herself in a decent position, got a very nice result out of it, and I think that from there, just got to build on these results. That's what she has to do. She has to learn and make use of all the experience that she got, and that's what she has to do. And I think that if you let her develop and give her the time, I think that Belgium can definitely, in a couple of years' time, maybe have someone up there that can move forward and that can represent the country in good ways in the women category. But give her time. That's the most important thing. I don't want to see those articles now like, oh my goodness, she's in the top 10 now. What's gonna happen next? What's the next big thing for her? Just keep it down, and with time, it will definitely come. The better results will get there, and we have to wait and see what the potential will be, but it looked very good, and it was a very solid result, very good outing.
Yeah, absolutely agree that they should keep the pressure away from her. Let's take a look at some other results. There was late night racing yesterday, as we said in the podcast. There was racing in Really Rad in Falmouth, Massachusetts, the Really Rad Festival of Cyclocross. Andrew Strohmeyer took the win ahead of Eric Brunner and Henry Coote. The women elite race was won by Magali Rochette ahead of Katie Klaus and Caroline Mani. There was late night racing in Europe, actually, in Aarhus. The party race there, Wout Jansen won on the velodrome ahead of Arne Vrachte and Eike Berends. The women's race was won by Julie Brouwers ahead of Femke Gort and Emil Voldager Nielsen, Danish junior woman, on the podium there. There was a race with some flamethrowers in Les Franques in Spain. Joffre Estape won ahead of Damien Beton, French rider, with González Inguanzo Macho in third. The women's race was won by Alexandra Valade ahead of Susanna Cristalla and Marta Espinosa. Then on to the races of today. There was racing in Denmark again, this time in the day. Wout Jansen taking the win again ahead of Arne Vrachte, but this time Max Heiner Oertsen was third. The women's race had the same top 2 as well. Julie Brouwers ahead of Femke Gort, and then another Danish rider on the podium, but this time a much older one, with Anne Dort Lipskid. There was racing in Luxembourg. This is where Marie Schreiber was, in Contern. She took the win by nearly 6 minutes on Alexe de Rademacher, with Joyce van der Beek ending third, 6.5 minutes down Issam. This is what Schreiber was up to. The men's race there was won by Timothy Gabriel ahead of Arne Baars and Theo Thomas. Then in the UK, the second round of the National Trophy Series took place. The men elite results are not in. I can check the Instagram of British Cycling, but there is nothing there. I only know Thomas Mean was leading going into the final lap. The women's race was won by Alderney Baker ahead of Xan Kreese and Anna Flynn. Imogen Wolf was racing for Visma Leasebike there. She ended fourth after an attack in the first half of the race. In Italy, there was racing in Salvirola, with Gioele Bertolini taking the win ahead of Antonio Folcarelli. And third place for Stefano Viezzi. He's moving up the ranks. Carlotta Borello won the women's race ahead of Rebecca Gariboldi and Beatrice Fontana. We're not done yet, because there was also racing in Medmenstetten. Dario Lillo, there's no way that's a real place name by the way, but Dario Lillo took the win ahead of David Menu and Gilles Mottier. Celia Géry took the win in the women's elite race ahead of Elisabeth Brandau and Amandine Muller. That is 2 first-year U23 French riders on the podium. Okay, let's wrap it up. The final result I can give you comes from Melgaço in Portugal. Kevin Soares Fernandez taking the win ahead of Mario San Milan. Miguel Rodriguez Novoa ended third. Lucia Gonzalez Blanco won the women's race ahead of Sofia Rodriguez River and Alicia Gonzalez Blanco. It's a lot of results, a lot of racing across the world, which is only positive to see. That will conclude it. Issam, it's getting hard for me to talk by now after all those results. Thank you for being here.
Quite some tongue twisters and breakers, but you managed well. So yeah, thank you for having me. It was a great weekend, and next race is already coming up with the Koppenberg, and then from there it's Europeans where the focus will be laid.
Yeah, so the order will be a bit mixed up in terms of podcasts. First, we'll make the European Championships preview. Then on Friday, we will cover the Koppenberg Cross. You can expect the episode of that to be online as soon as the race is finished, pretty much. We'll record, edit, put it out there. And then there's no racing for us to cover on Saturday. But on Sunday, there is, of course, the European Championships with 6 races, which we will then cover as good as possible in an episode that will be out on Sunday or Monday. That will cover it for today from Overijse. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will be back with a preview for the European Championships. Goodbye.